Well, it's really great to be here today at the Dinsdale Family Learning Commons on East Campus, one of my favorite places in the world. This was the library for East Campus when I was a graduate student here in 1985, 1986, 1987. And at one point, my doctoral dissertation was in the bottom floor of this building with a $20 bill in it. The tradition was when you filed your dissertation, you would put a $20 bill in the copy that went to the library and come back 20 years later and see if the $20 bill was still in the document. I'll leave it to you to guess whether mine was still in there or not. But roughly 20 years later, I came back to interview for the Vice Chancellor position that I ended up coming into in 2010. So as I get ready to retire and look toward next month when I'll finish my role as Chancellor here at the university, I just thought it would be fun to talk with students and some of our faculty informally today. So we're gathered here in order to do that and talk about some of the things that are really important about our university and important about what's happened over the last 7 years that I've had the pleasure and the privilege to serve as the Chancellor for our land-grant University Research Intensive campus here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. So great to be with you all today, and I look forward to the conversation. Who's got a question for me?
I do, sir. My name's Hunter Trainer. I'm a graduate of University of Nebraska-Lincoln and the College of Law here on East Campus. My question is about access and engagement, but I want to frame it before I get into the substance of it. I think that the pandemic triggered this sort of watershed reevaluation of the value proposition of higher education and four-year college degrees. That's not limited to the pandemic, but I think societally it triggered some questions about that. So specific to University of Nebraska-Lincoln as a land-grant institution, what role will a university like this play in either responding to some of those societal criticisms or pushing back on them?
Welcome back to campus, Hunter. Hunter was the ASUN president one of those years that I was Chancellor here 4 years ago. I think that's right. Yeah, 4 years ago. And then went on to law school, as he said, and graduated and is now a lawyer here in Lincoln. Maybe even going to be my lawyer, so coming up here. Yeah, coming up here. So thank you for the question. One of the fiercest things that I believe in, and I think many of you will have heard me say this before, I fiercely believe in the land-grant model of education. I absolutely fiercely believe in it. And we're very fortunate here at Nebraska to be one of the leading land-grant universities in the country. Our foundation is a land-grant university when we were formed here in 1869, 154 years ago. And access to the highest quality world-class education has always been the premier hallmark of that land-grant mission that we have. And it still is the hallmark of our mission 154 years later. And by access, we're actually, you may or may not know this, as a land-grant institution, we're one of the highest access land-grant institutions in the country. We are, right? There are several land-grant institutions in our Big Ten, right, that we're part of and proud to be part of, who are land-grants as well. We are the highest access land-grant institution in the Big Ten. And I'm really proud of that, proud of the opportunity that access provides for our students coming here as undergraduate students, coming here as graduate students, coming here as professional students like law students, for example. That access is critical, and it's been a hallmark of us for a long, long time. If you think about in Nebraska alone, and you go out today and you look at the population of our state, this institution has educated the majority of our teachers, of our doctors, of our lawyers, of our bankers, of our leaders in political life in the state of Nebraska. You go to our unicameral. The vast majority of the senators in the unicameral had their education here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. The vast majority of the 50 largest businesses in Nebraska and the CEOs of those organizations and their leadership, the majority of them educated here at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. So that just that access is powerful. You know, the knowledge that we are creating here with you, not just to create workforce or to do economic development, but the ability to think critically, to understand critically, to make decisions critically. That's what this education provides here powerfully at this land-grant university. So that access, Hunter, is so important. I'm so proud of that. You know, I'm doing a lot of reflection back over the last 7 years, you know, as I go forward here and leave the position. And probably the thing that I am most powerfully proud of is that in those last 7 years, we have graduated more students with high quality degrees here than ever in our history. Than ever in our history. 4 of the last 6 years, including we think this year, in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks time now for May commencement, will be record graduating classes for our university. Never happened before in our history. And again, that access and the access to that high quality education being such an important part of that. And then lastly, you know, kind of an add-on to that, I would be very remiss if I didn't say, I'm also very proud of the fact that over that course of time, our graduation rate here has increased by over 11%. Our 4-year graduation rate at the university is the highest it's been historically, and that's happened even during a time of COVID and a global pandemic, and it's just amazing to me that has happened. The need for that education, so the other part of your question, right, about the questions out there about the value of higher education or the value of higher education moving forward, we know from all kinds of data that show us that even if you look at it from a workforce perspective, you know, education leading to the workforce, that 70% of the jobs that are out there now and ahead of time in the future are going to require at least a bachelor's degree level education, if not more, if not greater graduate education beyond that. So that need is still there, absolutely, even as great as it's ever been in our history as a land-grant institution. Make sense, Hunter? Can you have a legal argument for me?
I have a question.
Uh-oh. Professor Ferreter.
It's Professor Ferreter, sir. Well, Chancellor Green, I'm also an alumni of our university, and like you, chose to come back, and now I'm faculty in chemical engineering. And I came back because Nebraska was very supportive of the research that I do, the state and the university. Can you, along with our teaching mission, I think research is an important role of the university that for us to engage the state and the world. Can you comment on the research portion of the university's mission in your time and going forward?
Yeah, well, let me embellish Dr. Ferreter a little bit here. So I've watched with great interest Dr. Ferreter's career in the 13 years I've been at the university, and it was already well established before I even got here 13 years ago. And in case you don't know, he's one of the best professors here at this university in mechanical and materials engineering, is a native of Ravenna, Nebraska, and central Nebraska, which coincidentally I got a gift yesterday of a painting of Custer County, Nebraska, so your home area, Shane, and is probably seen as the entrepreneur faculty member at the University of Nebraska, and has been for a while. So I just want to brag on you a little bit, Shane, because you're awesome. And recently has been involved in the starting of Virtual Incision, new surgical robotics company that is set to revolutionize surgery through miniaturized robots that he and his co-founder from the UNMC have co-founded, and is now about ready to take off and change the world. So Shane, thank you for everything you've done. Okay, research. Research and discovery is the engine of ingenuity. We know that. It's the engine that's going to help change the world. You heard me mention a few minutes ago that in our land-grant mission is highest quality education, accessible education, research and discovery, and development of new technologies and new knowledge from that research to drive forward. That was part of our land-grant mission from the very beginning. In areas that matter to the place of Nebraska as its land-grant university. And our third part of our mission is engagement with the people of the state of Nebraska, and we'll probably talk about that this afternoon as well. Research. So we're a Carnegie 1, R1, as it's referred to, level university. We're the only Carnegie 1 research university in Nebraska. UNL is the only one in our state. And what that means is that we have research intensive work across our campus in most of the major fields that we study here, right? So across all of our 9 academic colleges. What many people don't know is that UNL is considered an international leader in research in agriculture and food and life sciences, an international leader in materials sciences, an area that Dr. Ferreter is from, a world leader in digital research in the humanities, a world leader in early childhood education and early childhood development, number of areas that we're really seen as one of the leaders internationally in the world. We've been very successful over the last, I would say, decade and a half, Shane, in elevating and increasing our research enterprise here at the university. In the last 7 years, we have seen increases in our research capacity. Our research expenditures is how we measure that here at the university, each of those 7 years, including the 3 years we've been in a COVID pandemic, which most institutions were not able to do. Even in the Big Ten, they were not able to do that. They slipped, or they fell back, or they tried to maintain. We moved forward in all of those years, including last year when our research expenditures here were $341 million at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, which was a 6% increase over the year before. So I'm really proud of that and proud of the work that we're doing, the impact that it's making around the world. And I would add to that, you heard me say this a minute ago, we're not doing research just for the benefit of doing research. We're doing research that matters to Nebraska and matters to the people of Nebraska. And it's just great to see that happening. I anticipate, if I was to look out, Shane, and I think what I'm going to see happen as Jane and I watch from the distance here in Lincoln the next decade, I expect to see that continue to happen and to continue to grow in ways that are even beyond what we've seen because of the pandemic, frankly, over the last few years. I'm hopeful, and you know this because you were part of the author of it. In our strategic plan, the End 2025 plan, we have a goal of having $450 million in research expenditures here at UNL within the next few years. And I think we'll see that happen. I really do. I'm very proud of it. Who's next?
Hello, Chancellor Green. My name is Rafael Vargas. I am a sociology major here at the University of Nebraska and soon to be a graduate in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Just a bit of background, I'm quite involved on campus with multiple organizations, including Nebraska College Preparatory Academy, the University Honors Program, the Columbus Honor Scholars, new student enrollment, etc. And different organizations that essentially cultivate growth in future leaders, as well as finding a sense of community, not only within our campus space, but also within our general Lincoln community. And so my question to you essentially is, if you could tell us a bit more about how student engagement and involvement on campus has helped create a more engaged and diverse group of leaders at a university.
You didn't know I was going to do this, but congratulations. You were a Student Luminary awardee last week, so congratulations on that award. It's wonderful. Yeah, so I'm obviously bragging up our university today because I'm proud of it and really proud of what we do here. But Another hallmark of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln is that our students here matter, and our students are central to what we do. I've been at a number of universities in the course of my career, here at Nebraska, but at several others as well, and have colleagues all over the country at big public universities all over the country, including those in the Big Ten, our partners in the Big Ten. We are more student-centric here than any of the places I've been. Absolutely more student-centric, in that the student experience here matters, and what we are teaching here matters, and that one-on-one experience with students, with our faculty, with student support programs that we have, it is the best in the Big Ten. I'm convinced that is absolutely the case. We also believe that every person and every interaction matters here. That is part of our mantra here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We believe it. We believe in that being central to who we are. And I don't want you to think I'm just blowing smoke when I say that we truly are unique in that respect. I remember saying when I became chancellor in April of 2016, I remember really well the day that happened. Some of you may have read this Daily Nebraskan, talked about this about a week ago. I had actually taught a class. I was teaching a class in the animal science department, where I'm headed to right after this. I'm a faculty member in animal science, and I'm going over to work with a group of students right after this in a forum that they're hosting. And I'd been asked to come every semester and teach the senior students who were graduating in animal science a little bit of my life journey and as an animal scientist and as a leader and so forth. I taught that class at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I would characterize it as not unusual. That's the way we engage our students here at the university. It wasn't unusual. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I went downtown to the Van Brunt Center to be announced as the new chancellor. And I stood up and I said, it's just surreal to be named to this position at a university that really cares about its students and that really puts its students central to what it does in a way that no others do, right? And I'm in it, and I believe it, that is who we are here as a university. So, Osvaldo, good question, but that would be what I would have to say.
Can you just talk us through a little bit about what has made you most excited about coming back to the university when you came back in 2010, and what has made you really excited to come to work every day for the last year?
Yeah, Paul, good question. And you had a great year to look forward to as the new student body president. So congratulations on that. What made me come back? So I have to put a little context around this first. So I actually had been away from higher education for a decade. So I was a college professor at Texas Tech University and then Colorado State University for a number of years. I left the faculty position I had at Colorado State in 2000, and I was out of academia for 10 years. I was in private industry in a startup company as an executive in a startup company. Then I was a national research leader for the U.S. Department of Agriculture for a period of years. Then I was another executive stint with Pfizer, the pharmaceutical company in the animal health arena. And I had been recruited in 2010 to come back to UNL and to look at coming back to lead the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources that we're kind of standing in the middle of here physically on East Campus today. That was not my plan, Paul. I'll be really honest with you. My plan was that I had left academia to be in the business and the government sector, and I thought that's probably where I would be the rest of my career. And when I got recruited by a lot of alums here at the university, they knew I was an alum, that I was this was one of my alma maters, was my wife's double alma mater. We lived in Nebraska at the time, actually, as well. And I was skeptical that I wanted to do that because of the team I had and the team I was leading, and didn't feel like I could leave that team or that was the right thing to do. But when I came here to interview, I distinctly remember it really, really well. When I came here to interview for that vice chancellor at the time role, when I walked on this campus and went into the very first one of those interviews, I knew this was where I was supposed to be. Yeah, I just knew it. And it was because of the importance of that student piece that I talked about earlier, because of the need that was there in agriculture, particularly at that time, and because of the value that we were going to be able to build in the ag sciences. I just knew it, that's what made me excited to come back, right? And I wasn't wrong about that, thankfully. I wasn't wrong about that. That was absolutely right. What made me most excited to come to work every day was what I just told you. But at the different level now, instead of just ag focused, really the entire institution, and focused in that way with the entire institution. Thanks for the question. Oh my.
I have a question too. First, before I close my question, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, and I think I can speak from everyone here, probably everyone who's watching and will be watching this over the course of the next several weeks. You have been our staunch leader, and you have been just sort of that North Star that we needed so incredibly much over the last several years. I remember clearly that day when you came over to the center. When you were installed as our chancellor, I think there was an incredible amount of excitement and enthusiasm and anticipation for what was yet to come. I'm very proud that I had a small part in all of that, but never did any of us expect what we would be getting into. And you led us through some really challenging times and uncharted territories. And I just will say again, from where I sit, and I think from where many of us sit, we couldn't have asked for a more steadfast leader, a patient, heartfelt, sort of individual who cared so deeply about our institution, every single person here, and got us through in ways that not only let us hold our own, but actually landed us as a much more solid, stronger, more resilient institution. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. So thank you. But all right, so a little context. A little context. You can tell I like context, right? So a little context. Sue was the search committee chair when I was being vetted for the chancellor position. So when I talked about that day of the announcement, Sue was on the front row because she'd been the chair of that committee. There's a committee like that operating today to search for the next chancellor currently. And so Sue's been a leader a long time on this campus and is the person in early childhood development in the world, in my view. It's Sue Sheridan. Go back to April of 2016, right? I remember what I stood up and said the day that we announced, right? I stood up and said, it's a surreal moment. I can't believe this is happening. Wow, I mean, it's first-gen educated kid, and here I am to have the opportunity to lead this great institution, all of that. And brimming with hope and brimming with enthusiasm, and we're gonna build this thing to, I think I said 35,000 students, remember that? And the opportunities we have to build in research, we've done a lot of that and been successful in doing a lot of that, but none of us, and if someone says that they could have predicted what 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 were gonna look like, they're kidding themselves, because none of us could have ever predicted that the times would be the kind of times that we've had, whether that's a global pandemic that none of us saw coming or were expecting at least to happen at the level that it happened, and the response with which it happened, or whether it's political polarization growing over time, or unrest in the world and geopolitical tensions in the world, or racial unrest that has grown over time. None of that was predictable for us, and it happened, right? All of that happened. I've shared with several of you that when the whole lead up to what we now call COVID happened, our graduating class, several of you who are here today are in that class, were freshmen that year. So that graduating class was the COVID class. I mean, that's just real, right? It was 3 years ago, when a little over 3 years ago when that happened, right? None of us could have predicted that. And when we were leading up to that, and we were beginning to see what we didn't know but could be a big deal, you know, if you remember back to that, those of you that were freshmen here at the time, remember the cruise ship deals and the people that were carted to Omaha and put in quarantine and got all of that kind of, we were all watching it, but we didn't know anything about what it really was. Well, I remember when it became real. When it became real was when Jeff Gold, my colleague at the Med Center, told me what the predicted numbers could be of infections and of deaths that could result from what they knew at that time. That was February of 2020. And that was the first wake-up call for many of us. And you can imagine the feeling of responsibility that anyone in a leadership position had. It don't matter whether it's a secondary school program, a public institution like ours, governmental officials, public health officials, you know, what they were thinking at the time with all of those unknowns. When it became real to us on March 8th, 2020, and we knew then that we had a situation that was nothing like any of us had ever seen in our lifetime, anyone in the human world would not have known, that's when it set in. And I've shared this with some of you before. I remember that day really well. Deb will remember, our communications director will remember this very well as well. We were sequestered in the conference room in Canfield Hall in my office, where our leadership team had been for days, trying to think our way through what was coming at us, what we were going to need to do to protect our students, to protect our institution, to protect our community, to do our part in what the unknown was. And we had to make the decision to close the university. Remember that? And send students home. And not knowing, I guess many of us naively thought, well, we'll be back the 1st of April after spring break, and this will be a blip and we'll go forward. But none of us really knew what that was going to be like. I remember sitting in the chair at that table that day and thinking, I was meant to be here today. I was meant to be here to know how to lead that and how to make decisions, how to think critically, how to analyze critically, and to know what to do for our university community. And from there forward, it was fine. Wasn't fine, but it was fine, right? Because we did respond in a way that I'm really proud of the way we responded as an institution. We led as an institution nationally. And we handled that in a way that, as you said, Sue, we came out of in a fundamentally stronger place than we went in by comparison to what happened all over the country, particularly in higher ed. And I think we're going to see, for a number of years to come, recovery from that and what that's going to look like because of those kind of differential responses that happen. But I'm really proud of the way our faculty pivoted, our staff stood up unbelievable amounts of new things to do in order for you to come back. For our students to be able to be back that fall, even though it was a weird fall, we all know that, to be back that fall was a gargantuan accomplishment, right? And I hope our students who are graduating in 2 weeks understand and feel the importance of that and what that meant for that to be able to happen that way. And that's true in research. You know, when I mentioned research earlier, I mean, we could have shut our research programs down. We didn't. We didn't lose our research programs because we were so keen and important on making that happen that we couldn't lose that ground, that we went to great lengths to make that happen. And then the other thing that I'll point out, I'll never forget this. We had people stepping up here at the university to say, what can we do to help the public health community to get through this, right? So we had people making hand sanitizer here. Well, if you remember that, we had people at Innovation Campus making the hand sanitizer that was so direly in need that didn't exist. We didn't have ways to deliver that. Think nursing homes, hospitals, places that needed that throughout our own state. We made that here. Stood up the enterprise to do that and made that here at the university from the ingenuity of our staff that really stood up and made that happen. And then turned around and were able to create that for I know this sounds weird to you, but I mean, it was a huge deal. They created those resources for all of the food safety inspection service people in the United States. It was unbelievable to me that that happened here through the ingenuity of our people at the university. So I could go on and on about it. I mean, I was just so immensely proud of the way it happened, even though it was so hard. I mean, it was hard for all of us. It was really hard for all of us. But our people did it with grace, they did it with fortitude, they just were resilient, right? And came through it in a way that I'm really, really proud of. And for us to have had record graduating classes for you guys, I mean, I marvel at that happened.
Okay, but that wasn't really my question.
I know.
When you were installed as Chancellor, a lot of really exciting things did happen. One was that we celebrated the 150th anniversary of our institution. Another is that we crafted an N150 vision. And you already mentioned that we drafted, solidified, and launched an N2025 strategic plan. So considering those and other really sort of forward-looking things that have happened in your tenure here as Chancellor, what are you most excited about looking forward into the future of this institution?
Yeah, so the N2025 has a important date on it, which is 2 years from now, right? So it means the 5-year plan to get to 2025 for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And we have made great progress in the 5 aims of that. Sue was one of the co-chairs, as was Dr. Ferreter, of forming that N2025 vision that came out of our N150 vision. We had during our 150th anniversary year, every student should be able to quote this, 2019 was our 150th anniversary year. And it was the year before our current freshman class, was kind of in that bridge year. And we had a commission of, I think, about 160 people that were involved for a full year, talking about what should this institution look like at its 175th anniversary, 25 years down the road. And if you think about in today's culture, 25 years is like really dreaming, because it's hard to maybe even think 5 years out. So we're really thinking long-term visioning, and talked a lot about what our students were going to need, what we were going to need to really push in our student population, our research work, and our engagement, all the missions of the land-grant university. And out of that formed the N2025, the first 5 years of that strategic plan. The things I'm really excited about, Sue, that are in that plan, the research part I've already mentioned. We had high enrollment goals in there. That's pretty tough in the environment that we're in now post-COVID. So I don't think we're going to be looking at the numbers as much as the quality of the enrollment that we're going to have moving forward. But the student experience piece that is in there, the most valuable and important thing that is in that N2025 plan, in Ronnie Green's estimation, is that every one of our students as undergraduates will graduate with an experiential learning opportunity, at least one or more internships, paid internships, international experience, and research experience. And the goal for that is 2025. The class that will graduate 2 years from now. And we're on track heavily to meet that goal across the institution. That is immensely valuable and what I'm really proud of on the student experience piece. Another one of the goals is that we would become a Carnegie Community Engaged University designated by the Carnegie Foundation. We put the paperwork in for that 2 weeks ago, and we are very optimistic we will be named a Carnegie Community Engagement University by the end of this year. So we're very, very pleased about that. I'm very pleased about the diversity goals in our in 2025. We have doubled the diversity of our student population in the last 7 years, which is phenomenal. It's never happened in our history before. I think when I started in 2016, the incoming class of first-time students here at the university was something like 13% underrepresented minority students in that class. Today, it is almost double that. And this fall's class, we expect will continue to see that grow. That is immensely important for Nebraska, immensely important for us moving forward. And so to see that happen, is really great. I'm looking forward to seeing that continue to grow, and the importance of that growing and of that belonging happening here at this university. So those are the things that I would point to as excited about for the future. Ronnie.
Hi, Chancellor Green.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, like you touched on a little bit talking to Sue, I was elected student body president the day before the university shut down due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I remember.
And over the course of our time serving together, we handled a lot of those challenges related to the pandemic, but also to the heightened attention on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what that would look like on our campus. Looking back on that really pivotal year, how do you think that we did, and where do you see that moving forward?
So you think about that year, Ronnie. I mean, you remember it well, right? You're right. You were elected right there when all of this was happening, and the following year was your year of unexpected. We never knew this was going to happen. What do we do? I remember having many conversations with you about COVID policy, even and how we're going to handle our students through this first year that we went through. So thank you for your leadership during that time. You also remember summer of 2020, right? And the things that happened around race in the summer of 2020 that were very hard, very difficult, still remain hard, in our society, in our culture. Our diversity efforts, I'm very proud of them. And I think we have really put ourselves in a place from diversity and equity and inclusion position of leadership in this area, and it's working in this area, and I'm very proud of that. I'd like to see us do even more, to be really candid with you. I think we need to do more in this area, so I'm proud of that. I wish everyone understood its importance. I wish everyone understood its importance, because there's a lot of conversation out there about this currently that's not understood, that is not appropriately understood. And that's where I wish it was different. I wish that I'd been able to influence that more.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh boy, here we go.
Hi, Chancellor.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
My name is Lauren Kruger. I'm current internal vice president. So I'm really excited for the upcoming year, and we're going to be having to navigate kind of new chancellor, new vice chancellor.
Right.
So we're really excited for that opportunity, but kind of looking towards the new incoming class of 26. If you have any advice that you would give to a freshman coming to UNL, what would you say to them?
And this really hasn't changed, Lauren. This is what I said in 2016, and is what I say in 2023. For incoming students, right, when those kids run through the tunnel and form the N in August as the incoming freshman class, come here to learn how to think critically. That is your focus. Come here and learn how to think critically and embrace that. Understand the importance of that and emphasize that in your undergraduate years that you have ahead of you, and engage. Absolutely engage with the university, whether that's academically, in your classes. Don't be a passive student, be an engaged student, and extracurricularly. at the university. Be an engaged student extracurricularly and learn from one another. You know, I've been known for saying this for a long time to students. Excuse me, Sue and Shane, they might not agree with this as faculty members, but you will learn, speaking to the freshman class, you will learn as much or more from your colleagues as you will from the faculty. And I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe it. It was true for me as a student, and I would encourage students that way. Does that make sense? Well, thanks for being here, folks. This was more than I anticipated, actually. Yeah, I could probably stand up and talk about some of this stuff for a long time in case you couldn't tell, but yeah, I love this university. You all know that. Yeah.